Hey, it's James, Father's Rights and Resources, hashtag how I got custody. Just a quickie little pointer. I see cases all the time. It's another situation of basically trying to flip it back on them. I did a video about flipping things back on the court and shoving stuff back in their face by turning the tables and making them think, excuse me, and see or consider what things would be like if it's the other way around. So all the time I see courts giving custody to moms. It's so ridiculous. Giving custody to moms and their boyfriend or their new husband is a sex offender, a drug dealer, a gangbanger, has felonies or has violence or restraining orders in their history. Like there's a video that I do on my YouTube channel, and you can see on the thumb it says child abuser Judge Beth Marie Andrus, or Andrews. I think it's Andrus. But she and some commissioners before her and judges before her gave custody to this mom. The mom's boyfriend who lived with her was a violent felon who wasn't supposed to have a gun and flaunted guns and drugs and stuff on social media. They still gave her custody, even though Washington law in RCW 26.09.191 says if you have any violence or abuse or domestic violence or live with somebody like that, the court has to put restrictions on you. And the court not only didn't put restrictions on her, they made the dad go through a bunch of domestic violence stuff just because the mother accused him of that. And the mother moved in a guy who had a 5-year protection order against himself from his previous wife, who said that he broke the jaw of a previous girlfriend. So, that being said, what I would do in those situations when I go to court and say, if I had all those things on my record, would you be giving me custody? If a father had a felony for arson and a domestic violence protection order, and my first wife said that I broke the jaw of a girlfriend and I kept a gun under my pillow and I made her afraid to go to the bathroom at night, if all those things happen and it was me, would you give me custody? Then why do you give a mother custody who lives with somebody like that? You're cool with a child abusing, violent felon, sex offender, etc. I know a case in which the courts gave custody. The dad had custody. Mom went to court, and the courts gave custody to the mom. Well, the dad actually settled and agreed on the mom having custody. But temporary orders, they gave custody in Pierce County Superior Court. It wasn't Judge Catherine Nelson. It was the other crazy witch down there. There's 2 main witches at Pierce County. But in any case, the mom's boyfriend was a registered sex offender, and he had 3 felonies for selling heroin or possession of heroin and 2 for cocaine. And at one point he got shot because he was a drug dealer or a gangbanger. And the mother went to jail because she was the driver in a getaway car during a murder. She basically snitched on her boyfriend at the time who committed a murder. And she admitted to having mental health issues when she got out and then went to a mental hospital after she got out of prison to serve her short term for confessing and snitching on her boyfriend. So they gave custody to that one. And the guardian ad litem recommended that she have custody, they just don't let the boyfriend be around the children. Well, here's the other thing, and I never see dads or lawyers ever argue this. If it's okay for her to have custody or to have the child, and you're going to protect the child by saying don't let the child around this abusive person, that mother already showed poor judgment in her parenting by having that person in their life at all. You, the court, say the child should never be around that person. So you just incriminated the mother because you're saying the child should never be around somebody, but the mother made a decision and wanted the child around that person, and you're saying no more. So why would you turn around and reward and give custody to the parent who did something that you're trying to protect the child from? That's like, having a zookeeper who leaves the cage open or lets kids walk into the lion's den and pet the lion. And you turn around and you hire that zookeeper at the next, they got fired from a job because they did that. You hire that zookeeper instead of one with a safety record. Why would you reward the person who endangers the child? You're saying it's a danger for the child. So I'd tell the court, you're saying it's a danger for the child to be around that person. That person, up until you spoke, wanted the child to be around that person. So you're saying, I want to give the child to the person who endangers the child, because we're saying the new boyfriend should never be around the child. But we're going to give the discretion and discernment and the decision-making up to that very endangering parent to do that. What kind of sense does that make, Your Honor? And you tell the court that. I'm not telling you to tell the court. Let's back up and qualify. That's what I would tell the court. I mean, you in general, as in any reasonable person would tell the court that. So I would tell the court that. Just so I'm not technically giving you legal advice, because lawyers out there own all the rights to giving people legal advice. Even though when when you're in prison, prisoners are actually allowed to give each other legal advice. So convicts and criminals can do it in jail, and basically the criminal lawyers outside of jail get to do it, but regular citizens can't do it, even though the law is out there for everybody to read and to point out to them. But in any case, I would be telling the court that. How are you going to protect the child from a crazy person or a monster, and then you turn around and give custody of the child to the parent who allowed them around that monster? Or this child with asthma should never be living in Denver or a high altitude place. But here's the parent who wants to go take him to Denver, or already done. If that person allowed their boyfriend, or at one point in the case first case I was talking about with Beth Andrus, they ordered that the child not be allowed around that boyfriend. Not only was that boyfriend around all the time, she ended up marrying him. And then Judge Beth Andrus said, oh, well, everything's okay because they seem to have resolved the situation. So Beth Andrus is forgiving of a mom's boyfriend who has domestic violence, but she's not forgiving to a father who's accused of domestic violence, even though he doesn't have any incidents. Just because the mother said so. The mother who invites this monster into her home, who a family law commissioner said, don't go around. So there's contradiction all over the place in this particular case. But see, nobody confronts the judges on this bullcrap, and nobody says it to their face. How dare you say, this is a danger to the child, and I'm going to get, let's say there's a home with asbestos in it. Here's a parent who moved the child into the home with asbestos in the walls and they knew it, or they kept the house unclean, it didn't clean up cat poop and is rat infested, and there's plenty of cases like that. And so they give custody back to that person living in the same environment, in the same situation. So I would just flip it on them, and I would tell them, here's the best interest of the child argument. Best means very optimum, top of the line, better than any other situation. What's best? A parent who's allowed violence in the home? A parent who's allowed guns in the home from somebody who's restricted from guns? A parent who's allowed somebody in the home who's broken the jaw of a woman and beat up and had guns under the pillows, who flaunts weed or something like that? Or is it better, not even best, what's better, that or living in a home where the parent who doesn't do drugs, doesn't live with anybody violent, doesn't own a gun themselves? What's better for a child? Obviously the second one. So if that's better and you're supposed to do what's in the best interest of the child, you have to place the child in the home that doesn't have all of those things. Instead of blindly trusting the parent who allowed a violent felon, gangbanging, drug hustling, psychotic weirdo in her home, instead of trusting her to make sure that doesn't happen again, why not give the child to the parent where that never ever happens? If it's about the child, I'd refocus the judge back onto the child. And then I'll say the Court of Appeals would reverse you on discretionary review, and then I'd follow up with discretionary review. But again, just a short and simple tidbit on, because I just saw another case where they just did that, and they told the mother, don't leave the child, or don't allow the child around. Now with the sex offender case, it was don't leave the child alone with a sex offender. And the law is mandatory. You have to put restrictions on a parent who lives with somebody like that. So just another way to flip it on them.